This is Cindy Ingram, and welcome to the Art Class Curator podcast, where we're taking art out of the dark with thoughtful explorations and in-depth interviews designed to ignite curiosity and delight in art classrooms everywhere. Today, we're talking to Nic Hahn, an art educator and leader who's been making an impact on our field for almost a decade with her blog, Mini Matisse. In addition to the passion and dedication she shows her students, Nic inspires her online tribe of art teachers through her website and her work with the art of education. In this episode, we talk about how Nic connects her students to their community and peers, both locally and globally. All right, so I am very pleased to welcome Nic Hahn from Mini Matisse, and I have been following your blog for years and years and years. I don't even know how long you've been writing it, but I feel like it's been for my entire career. So I am so happy to welcome you here.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. This is great.
Yes. So today we're going to talk about, especially about your work about community and collaboration with artists and things like that, because I've been really inspired by a lot of the stuff that you have written recently and presented. So, but I want to start and have you tell us a little bit about what your history is in art education and kind of a quick rundown of your experiences.
Sure. Okay. Well, you know what? I went to school in Wisconsin, UW Stout, Wisconsin, and that was many, many moons ago, it seems like. And my first job was in Wisconsin, and I was working at a high school. So I had that experience for a year, and then we moved right away and ended up in Minnesota. Since I've been here, I've worked at very urban school, downtown Minneapolis, and that was a great experience. But then shortly thereafter, I ended up in suburbia, where I have been ever since at ISD 728. And I've been at several of the schools, teaching at both elementary and middle school. So I've had this great experience K-12, and then I've actually done a couple of adjunct jobs and at the college level, and I work with the art of education, sometimes teaching adults there as well. So
awesome. Yeah,
it's been a wild ride, and I love every level for a different reason. So I'm so fortunate to have those experiences. Also to be in the one job that I had in Wisconsin was very rural, to be then in urban and suburban. And I've had the opportunity to work on a cart as well as have a beautiful room that I have right now. So I feel like as far as art education goes, I've been fortunate in the 15-ish years that I've been teaching to have many different experiences to allow me to relate to so many art teachers out there.
Yeah, I feel the same way with my experience. I've taught just about every level, and it gives you a really well-rounded view of education, which I think is really excellent for your work with working with teachers and helping them in their classroom. So that's awesome that you can relate to that.
Yeah.
So when did you start your blog, and what prompted you to start it?
It seems like a long time ago now, but 2010, I guess. Okay. And gosh, I want to say, in the past 8 years, the tremendous growth that has happened with social media is just mind-blowing. So the intent of my blog was simply to communicate to parents what was happening in the art room, because I felt so often the product that we were coming home with never told the full story of the happenings of the art room. So I wanted to reach out to the parents and tell them the process and amazing aha moments and the things that make me want to teach. I wanted to bring that home to the parents as well. So I started Mini Matisse, and that was the intent to begin with, but it became so much more of a community with other visual art teachers. And that's who I ended up spending most of my time communicating with. Plus, my districts have moved into other ways of communicating with parents that have been more successful. But the blog has really turned into a conversation with other art educators.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and nowadays it's, we have Facebook and all sorts of technology to communicate with the parents, and the blogs are not as necessary. So I've seen a huge change in blogging and how blogs are used, and it's been kind of fun to watch that process. Absolutely. And I went through your blog today, and I noticed, and this is, you post a lot. I couldn't believe it. I was just looking at the dates. And I'm like, this is like every 2 days. Or you're posting what, like 3 times a week?
It varies. You can definitely see when my life is crazy. I don't keep myself regimented because Mini Matisse is supposed to feed me. It's not supposed to cause a stress. And so I try very hard to not make it regimented. And when I do, like in February, I have always done I call it a crush, #crush. And I choose to crush on mediums this last year, and I'm more structured during that month, and it's very hard for me. So just going on, speaking to what's happening in my life and taking breaks when my life is more than I can handle is a permission that I give myself when running this blog.
Yeah, it's good. And I love the storytelling element in the blog and everything. It's just such a good resource for teachers, for sure. So how has blogging impacted your teaching?
Well, like I said, it has created a community. I think initially I found my tribe with my blog. There was other bloggers out there who started a conversation, and I was able to admire their work and what they were bringing to their classroom, and then bringing that into my students' experience. I think that's the main thing. I think it has grown to Facebook and Instagram, specifically Twitter as well. Joining the K-12 Art Chat has developed my tribe as well. I mean, there's so many outlets out there. Trying to find a balance between life and all these outlets is important, but I try to because I think it's so important to stay connected with my tribe.
Yeah, definitely. And, art teachers can feel so isolated. So that's really awesome to have found that.
Yep, absolutely.
You recently presented NAEA about working with teaching artists, and I've noticed on your blog that you've done a lot of community projects and community collaborations. Can you tell us about some of your favorite community projects and why this is so important to you?
Yeah. Initially, so when I was asked to speak at the carousel at NAEA, it was specific to working with visiting artists, which I have done. And what I described in that presentation was that bringing in visual artists is so amazing, but so much work. Because for me, I had to ask for money, write a grant. The grant was denied. Ask for money again, write a grant, have the grant matched, work out a schedule, so on, so on, so on. Whereas it was totally worth it because this artist was amazing and it created an experience for my students that they would have not otherwise had. I wanted to look at how I could bring in the community in a less stressful way. And so I kind of took my visiting artists and kind of switched that around a little bit, bringing in the community. And so for certain projects, and I'm going to talk about the most recent one I have done where I battled and brought in fibers into my classroom. I have been resisting.
Terrifying.
I know. I was scared. There are people that have that down pat, and I was just not one of them. But I was going to venture into this with fourth grade. And
fourth grade.
Fourth grade. They're going to cry. Like, it's a new skill. It's going to be hard for them. There's going to be criers. And sure enough, the first day that I did this, there was. Luckily, I had a little bit of foresight, and I invited some volunteers to come in as well. I emailed the parents, and I emailed visiting. It's a group in our area that is for retired adults to find volunteer opportunities. And so I contacted them. They're called RSVP, and they sent me, it ended up being all women, but I ended up with probably 8 people from their group and 8 people from my parent group. And it was not all parents. It ended up being a lot of grandmas. And they came into my classroom to work with my students when they were working with fibers. And when that frustration heightened, their sole purpose was to be a cheerleader, to calm my students down, to give them the reminders of the lesson. And my room was calm. My students felt successful. And I, too, in response, was super calm, too. I wasn't being pulled in a million directions. So bringing in these volunteers, and I called them experts at the time, even though some of them had no sewing background at all, brought in the calm, brought in more viewers into my classroom to see this is what art education can look like. It's different than what you had probably as a student. And I want you to go out and tell others about the amazing things that is happening in this studio right now. So there was a couple of goals here. One was making sure that my students' needs were met. Another one was bringing in the community to share the experience of my classroom, and then hopefully to spread that seed of the amazing experiences that our students share in the art studio.
That is really awesome. And I love that you picked a project that was going to be especially frustrating, because as you were talking, I was imagining me the first time I was trying to teach my students facial proportions when none of these kids knew how to use a ruler. It was the first time I'd been with this kid. I'm like, this is the first thing we're going to do. And, they didn't know even to start at the 0. They were all starting at the 1, and there was only one of me, and I was so stressed, and I was trying to get to everybody, and everybody was frustrated. So we ended up throwing the rulers out and trying something new. And I just love that, you picked something that you knew was going to go that way, and you found the people there to address that, because I needed all those people at that moment in time. That's amazing. And what a great experience for the volunteers as well. To be able to participate in that.
And one of them, especially with the RSVP, I think it's very purposeful for them to have a reason to come in. And I actually found a lot of the people that were volunteering are ex-educators. So they were still able to fill that bucket that they had so full at one point in their life. So it was a great, back and forth relationship that happens in the classroom when you invite the community.
That's amazing. And now, how did you work that out with the scheduling? Because I imagine you teach K-6 now?
I do. Yep. Correct. Yep.
So it was only 4th grade. So they came at the same time every day.
Yeah. Sort of. Yes. And so it does take some brain power ahead of time. And I did identify, on this day, from this time to this time, I'm seeing this class. If you're working elementary, you know that you work in digital days, or you work on a Monday through Friday schedule, or whatever it is, and you have your own educator lingo. I think when you're creating a schedule where you need community members to come in, you have to be very specific, let them know what classes are when, so that they can come and visit when they have the invested interest, if they are a family member.
Oh, right.
Yep. And then as far as working with the RSVP group, I just gave them the time blocks that I needed. And when volunteers were able to come due to the day or the time, then they would sign up. So it does take about, I would say, a month ahead of time to set this all up.
I would imagine quilting guilds and stuff like that might be good places to tap for that.
Right. And you know what? Here's the deal. So some people were not experts at all. They just came in to be cheerleaders, and that was perfectly fine. But there were some people that came in and had some experience, and they were able to even give some insight as to, well, have you tried this? Or would you consider that? They gave me I learned from them as they came in and they were helping with the students. So that, again, just you are opening yourself up to being a little vulnerable and and when you do that, then you can allow yourself to learn from others, your students, the volunteers, the people in the room. Yep. Absolutely.
I think that's super valuable for the students too, because I think some teachers, and I've experienced this through my work in the last few years, is they sometimes are, they're scared to fail in front of their students because they don't want to be seen as not the expert in what they're teaching. But art is so vast. It has, there is no way any one of us can be an expert in everything. And so I always just tell them, who cares? Who cares if you don't know? Just tell them, I don't know, but we'll learn together. So I love, bringing in the experts, because then you can show that to your students too, that, there are ways to, learn outside of.
And there's many right answers, So the project I didn't even mention, the project that we were doing, we were creating a recorder case for the recorders that they were using in music class. Just having different people teach different stitches or different ways to tie their knot or whatever it may be. One way is going to click with one kid and another way is going to click with another. And then also giving that permission student to student as well, because a fourth grader might know how to teach a fourth grader better than an adult does. So even though you're allowing yourself to, like you said, to be vulnerable or to say, well, maybe I don't know that. It's not that you don't know it. You know how to do it for yourself, but how does a kindergartner do it? How does their brain work? What are the words that trigger their knowledge? So yep, absolutely. Good points from you.
That's awesome. Okay. So as I was listening to you, I was thinking about the school that my daughters are in.
Yep.
We're in the suburbs. And if an art teacher emailed the parents, she would get, 12 people the next day because it's that sort of community that we live in, which is amazing. But schools that I've taught at have all been more urban schools without a lot of parent participation. Mm-hmm. And I know you said you've worked sort of both ends of the spectrum. What about those students, what about those people who are in situations where there aren't a lot of parent volunteers? What do you suggest for that?
If you are in an urban area, I think there's more opportunity for volunteers out there or volunteer groups that I was kind of talking about. There's a higher population of people, therefore there's going to be more outlets. So rather than relying on your parent group, maybe you're relying on the Boys and Girls Club, or maybe you're relying on the YMCA to have these pockets of people that are looking for volunteer opportunities. Or sometimes it's even, people that have to, you seek out a college, people that have to come up with hours or something to serve in a certain area. So looking at what your area has, if I was more rural, this might be a little bit different. Working parents might not be able to come in, but I would still seek out, if I was rural, I'd talk to the churches and see who would come in from some of the churches. And I think you're going to find some volunteers there. So you have to know your community and where the time is and who the people are that might be involved or willing to be part of your efforts.
Yeah, and that can benefit you in so many different ways, just getting involved in the community. Because then I'm thinking about, when you do a fundraiser or when you do an event, you've made all these contacts that then you can tap people for, pizza boxes if you need pizza boxes, or, just all sorts of different opportunities to get out there.
100%.
That's awesome. Excellent. So can you think of any other tips or advice that you would have for teachers starting a similar program?
Yep. Starting early is absolutely one. Anticipate anything that you possibly can. However, again, be forgiving of yourself in your first year or your first time and take notes. And the next time that you make the same effort, make those changes. Be a partner with your community, use your administrative staff. I found that the paras in my buildings have resources that are incredible. Talk to, the cooks and the custodians. It's amazing when you start having those conversations with the people around you, where the pockets are, that you will find the resources that you can use for the benefit of your classroom.
That's awesome. And you feel less isolated too. I love that.
It's true.
Okay. So moving on, another one of my favorite projects of yours is the artist trading card project.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you tell us about that and what the impact that has had on your students in your school?
Okay. Yeah. Around that same time that I was developing Mini Matisse, so 2010, I was craving this relationship outside of my classroom, bringing my classroom beyond the walls of the studio. And so I started seeking out some different trades. I didn't have it organized in such a way that I do now, but I sought out our cultural liaison, who's from Japan. And she's like, hey, I'll set this up for you. You make some art. Japan will make some art. We'll do a trade. I was hooked right away because we were creating this relationship with someone across the world, with people that are the same age as my students. We were calling a younger age level artist. So we were giving like this hierarchy to what is happening in the classroom. And there was a connection right away. So in past years, so we just finished up our last artist trading card, was our third annual. And what I did was I just put out on my blog, hey, does anyone want to get involved with this artist trading card swap? The first year I had 100 people right away. And so I had to close it down. And now we are I closed it down at 130 this last year. We had, I think I said 14,000 cards come through my classroom.
Wow.
And what happens is artist trading cards are baseball size cards. So they're 2.5 by 3.5 inches. They're art that is created by an artist with the intent to trade with someone else. The teachers would wrap them up in groups of 10. One teacher would send me 100, and I would send them back a 10-pack from this school and a 10-pack from this school and a 10-pack from this school. They would get their 100 back, but they'd be from all the different trades, or many of the different trades that came in. So we had students from all over the United States participate, private and public schools. We had schools from Hong Kong and Thailand and Australia, and then 22 schools from Italy that participated this year. And within the United States, Texas was really big. We had a lot of people, a few more than normal from Minnesota, but it was incredible. It was incredible. And then beyond that, beyond the exchange of the students' artwork, there is so much chatter that happens on social media. So I just received something from, let's say, Mr. E, because all of them are wrapped up in information from the teacher. So you have the connection and you can tag Mr. E and say, we just got your cards from, Tennessee, and we live in Italy. And so there's a connection between teachers as well.
That's just incredible. And so on the back of the cards, do the kids write, about themselves or anything, or is it just like age and what do they write?
Yeah, a little bit. They write their name, they write their age, they write the medium, they write the title, and if there's a little bit more information, the location as well. I don't know if I mentioned that. So those are I want to call them requirements, but they're not always followed 100% because there are some language difficulties. But for the most part, we get that information on every single card, so the students know where they're getting it from. What's interesting is this is a K-12 participation activity. And so a high schooler might end up with a kindergartner card, or, a middle schooler might have a fourth grade card. And that just makes it all the more interesting as well.
Yeah, I love, our world is becoming smaller and smaller now that we've got the internet. But when I was a kid, we didn't have computers with the internet, and I had pen pals. I don't know how I got these pen pals, but I had pen pals that I would write in different countries, and I loved it. And you get getting that physical mail. It was so exciting. And I love that just sort of tangible thing that they can hold that is from somewhere far away, from some kid far away. That's just, it gives me goosebumps just to think about it. That's really amazing. And
you bring up a good point, Cindy, is that what was good for you as a 12-year-old is good for a 12-year-old now, is good for a 12-year-old in the 50s, is good for, there is a place for time and growth, for growth in education, but you also have to consider what is developmentally interesting. And you're right, that tangible piece of artwork coming from someone else somewhere in the world that lets your brain imagine a different place is exactly what artist trading cards are all about.
Yeah, I had this pen pal. Oh, I'm remembering now. It was this boy in Africa, and he wrote a poem. Where did I find that? I don't even know where I found these pen pals, but it was amazing. It's no wonder that this is the job I have now.
Yes.
I did all sorts of stuff that's similar to what I'm doing now. That's just awesome. So you're capping it, and I imagine that if you were to not cap it, you probably would have, I don't know how many, you would probably have thousands of teachers.
I literally cap it after 3-4 days. I mean, I have to. I'm running it 100% on my own at this point. I could see maybe in the future sponsoring or working with, someone. But at this point, doing it by myself, I have to cap myself so I can manage it. So it is legit just management. But I'd like to see it grow. Right now, I sell it on TPT, so someone who wants to participate would buy a $10 buy-in, and that allows me to send the artwork back. I don't end up making any money on it. That's not the point of it. It's to just make sure that I have enough funds to mail this package back to the participants.
Yeah, you're mailing something to China. You need...
Yes.
Well, that could be where you could bring in some volunteers. I bet you could find, but that would be, you're teaching full time. So when are you going to have time to do that too? So, but I love it. I think it's just amazing. And
and there has been some volunteers with my artist training cards. I have brought in the other art educators in my district. Mm-hmm. And boy, that's a great connection too, because we don't have our PLCs where we actually get to meet with each other. So in the past years, I've had them come help me organize. This last year, it just logistically didn't work. But yeah, they're always willing to help me out as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine even art teachers around the world would be willing, it could be. It's awesome. I love it. Even teachers last year, after you capped it, they were asking me how to get in. And I'm like, I don't know. I told them, I was like, find another teacher. I was like, get on Facebook, find somebody else and trade with them.
And 100%, that's what happens when there is that conversation. And, I'm posting throughout on Instagram. I'll post some artist trading cards or whatnot. How do I get involved is always a question. And then the next person will say, well, I'll trade with you. And so there are these mini connections that happen even from just the celebration of the artist trading card swap.
Yeah. Can you think all of those little connections that you've provided as a person? That's amazing. Okay. So I love that. Do you do anything, like what kind of artwork do you put on your artist trading cards? Do you make it any sort of regional thing, or is it just a project you choose, or?
Nope. I allow the art teachers to choose. There are a lot of tab or choice-based classrooms that participate where every single card is different. I think it's a great way I want this card to be able to be produced in a classroom that is trying to obtain content, trying to work on a certain medium, I want it to also work into our current curriculum if our teacher so chooses to do so. So I have no restrictions on the type of art or the medium. My hope is that it can fit into, an artist trading card sleeve. But other than that, there's really not a lot of requirements beyond that.
And I just thought about it too. The kids who are at your school every year have one from every year. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. All right. Let's move on from that. Because I'm just going to talk about how wonderful it is. I just think it's amazing. Okay. So, one of my favorite things to teach is art appreciation, art history, and I really love to integrate works of art into your classroom. Can you tell us what are your favorite ways to integrate artwork into your classroom?
Okay, I have a couple of different ways that I bring artists into my classroom. Every year I have a warm up where students will come in and will watch a video typically, and it's usually produced by myself in some way. This year it was monster medium so that they understood the word what medium. But last year it was bio. So bit, B-I-T-O, bio, a little tiny bio of an artist. I am the opposite of you. I did not enjoy art history in college, and it was a struggle for me, and mostly just because it was a lot of reading, and I'm dyslexic, and that made that part of memorization and reading very difficult. So because it was so hard for me, I decided to embrace it full-heartedly and did a ton of research on lots of different artists and introduced them through drawing a sketch note as I was telling about an artist. These research projects these like bit bios, they were only about 3-4 minutes long. And then the following week, we would dive in a little bit deeper. And they were a variety of artists. I wanted to hit a couple of like well-known artists such as Pete Mondrian or Frida Kahlo. But then I brought in Faith Ringgold and I brought in Bob Ross. I called him an artist. I even brought in my daughter and my son because I wanted my students to know that an artist can be of any age, and my children are artists, you guys are artists, to have that conversation as well. So Bit Bio, as just their everyday warm-up, was one way that I brought in artists. Most recently, I just watch Instagram and I find inspiration from a lot of the contemporary artists that are out there. So most recently, Nic Hahn has been my inspiration, and we looked at her work to create an amazing composition activity. So students were able to look at her work, and then we replicated it in a game in my classroom. And in order to do that, we had to know her work prior to creating. So just bringing in artists as inspiration whenever I can is of importance to me as well.
Oh, I saw that one on your blog. Is that the one where you gave them all the everyday objects and they had to arrange them and photograph?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yep.
Well, one thing you said, and I think it's super important, is art history has always been taught. You just hand the kids a book and then they read. Right. No, like you have a learning disability that prevented you, but I think every student, if they were to pick up Gardner's Art of the Ages, would have absolutely no idea what they're learning as they're reading that thing. So I think it's great that we're finding other ways to teach art history that are fun, that are engaging, because it is amazing if you actually teach it in a way that shows how amazing it is. So,
right. I mean, so when we did the Biddo bios, like you said, make it interesting. And one of the things that we did was we actually became free to the next week. So a lot of the students, like I legit drew eyebrows on their forehead before they got to leave, or, we took photographs of themselves posing like Frida, anything that can make that stick in their brain for life, you're winning, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that involves some fun. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I totally agree. And once they've looked at an artwork for a number of times, or they know about an artist, like it becomes a part of who they are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just so valuable and amazing. And I love that you drew the eyebrows on it. That's really cute. That's cute.
Yeah.
So this was, the Biddo bios was just warm up. It was not related to whatever project you were working on. It was just something added on extra.
No, because I showed that to kindergarten through 5th grade, and I'd have that for a week. And that featured artist would be like highlighted, 2 weeks actually, 2 digital weeks, which is a long time. It's like 24 days. So, they'd be smothered throughout the classroom. And I couldn't have every lesson relating back to that artist because it was K-5. Also, it's a limited time that I was talking about that artist, and then we'd move on. So no, my warm-ups have nothing to do typically with what we're learning for the day, but that's what I like, is having this little tiny mini lesson within my hour to break up their day a little bit.
Yeah, and I love that because I've taught both elementary and middle, and I had the hardest time fitting in the art history and the art discussion and that sort of thing in elementary, because you don't have that much time, and you really want to focus on the studio because you only have them once every 6 days or whatever. Yep. So I love that. And it takes the pressure off of you too, to just say, okay, I'm going to do this for, the first 5 minutes of class. And then it's okay that it doesn't fit into this master lesson plan the rest of the day, that is valuable within itself. So that's amazing. I love that tip. And do you have those videos online?
I do. That's another pay teacher thing, because here's my philosophy on TPT. If I put in extra time that takes away from my family, then I put it on TPT to share it with others. And then the funds from that go back to my family to kind of pay them back for giving me away during that time. And so, Biddo bios took a ton of time. My students got to benefit, but I wanted to share it with other people so that they could offer it to their students too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, that video bio every 2 weeks, even every 2 weeks, that's a lot, because you have to do the research, and then you have to do the editing, and then it has to make sense.
And everything was created by me. So all the drawings, I didn't use any images that I could, get in trouble for later. Right. I didn't want to use anything from the artists themselves. So it is all my content that was created. Yep.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, I will link to that in the show notes. Okay. So teachers, I'm sure teachers are interested in that, especially the elementary teachers, because we need more art appreciation resources for elementary teachers out there.
Right. You know what? And I'm going to say, let's link that activity with Nic Hahn's composition game, because that was a real success. And I think if you're working, so now we kind of hit the Biddo bios for our elementary, but 4, 5, 6, 7 on up through high school could really enjoy this activity for the composition and learning about this contemporary artist.
And I think, and just teaching composition is fun, I think, in general. So putting an artist in there is fabulous. So everything we talked about today, we will make sure we link all of the projects. If I'm sure you've written about most of them on your blog. And we will link to all of them. So that's awesome. All right. So can you give us the link to your blog what are your favorite social media channels and how can people find you?
Sure. Mini Matisse, so MiniMatisse, and it's .blogspot.com is my blog. But then beyond that, active on Instagram at Mini Matisse Art. I'm active on Twitter at Mini Matisse. And then I do have Facebook, but I'm not very active on that. So I would say Twitter, Instagram, those are the places to reach me, or checking out the blog at any time.
Awesome. Okay, so this is the end, and I want to ask you the question that I ask every guest at the end of every episode, and that is, which artwork changed your life?
That is a super tough question, but I think I'm going to answer it with the reason that I named my daughter Matisse. Matisse's work is kind of the first, I'm going to say, abstract-ish art that weaseled its way into my heart. And now if I were to identify myself as an art lover of realistic or abstract, it would definitely be abstract. I love bright, bold colors. Matisse fits into that. He's kind of my first love, and therefore I named my daughter after him. I mean, that's how much I love him. So specifically, which piece? I don't know. I guess just his paper cuts and his bright, bold colors on his paper cuts. I know that wasn't exactly the one, but that's
I know that is well, art is different. Artworks and artists are meaningful to people in different ways. So That's amazing. And I also was thinking too, I didn't have elementary art when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And I had middle school art. The only artist I ever remember studying until I was a junior in high school or senior in high school was Matisse.
There he is.
Yeah. I think he might have been my first artist love too. Well, he was my art teacher who was the same. She was at my middle school, and then she moved. She got a job at the high school, and she did the same project twice, even though she knew it was the same kids. But anyway, we did a Matisse project in middle school. We did a Matisse project in high school, the same project. But then she showed us slides and slides and slides, and yeah, that's the only. But I don't remember studying any other artists until I went to Europe and when I was in a junior. And
didn't your mind I didn't have a lot of art history either. And when I went to college, I loved art history. I loved listening to the stories. I just couldn't remember it. So I ended up failing, that's
right. Yep.
What a bummer, but I love it.
Yeah. And I went there and I was like, people work here. People look at this every day and it's their job. And I went and got home and my whole world was changed. So
there it is.
Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your amazing work, not only just in this last interview, but in the last 8 years of blogging and sharing your journey with us. You've benefited so many teachers. So thank you so much for that. And so many students.
Yes, there's lots of students. And thank you for this opportunity. What a treat to join you on this podcast. That's amazing. Thank you.
Thanks again to Nic for joining me on the first episode of the Art Class Curator podcast. And thank you all for listening. Be sure to check out the show notes at artclasscurator.com/2 to learn more about Nic's work and everything we talked about today. In our next episode, we talk with Megan Hildebrandt, an artist and art teacher who transformed an unbelievably difficult life experience into an incredible learning opportunity for her students. I can't wait to share her story with you. Keep listening to hear a preview of my interview with Megan. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and give us an honest rating on iTunes. This will help other teachers find us and hear these amazing stories. Do you want even more art inspiration? Sign up for Art Class Curator's once-a-week email newsletter, Your Weekly Art Break. Teacher Sarah Warnock says, I truly do take a break from my busy week to check out all your links and feel inspired. Everything you share is relevant, meaningful, and also super helpful. You definitely help me become a better art teacher, and I look forward to your emails each week. You can sign up at artclasscurator.com/artbreak. And as a free gift for subscribing, you'll get 6 free art interpretation worksheets to use in your classroom. Be sure to tune in next week for more inspiring art interviews.
They just become part of the architecture, which is an awesome, freeing way to be an artist. A lot of visual artists aren't like wanting to go and be, I am the artist in the hospital. They just want to become part of the space, and that then will allow themselves to just feel like they're supposed to be there and not as outsiders, but that they're part of a treatment experience.